What's up, guys? Nick Whalen here from RotoWire. Today, we are going to break down 4 of the biggest busts so far in fantasy basketball this season. And frankly, 4 players I'm not all that confident will get things turned around. All right, so if we're talking busts, disappointments in fantasy basketball, a lot of the time it's linked directly to injuries. And, with one obvious exception, we'll try to stay away from that as we go through our list of the top 4 biggest busts. Guys like Luka Doncic, Brandon Miller, Paolo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, they're all great players who are giving you high-level production before injuries kind of derailed their season. So, have they been disappointing? Sure, but they don't really qualify as true busts to me. So we're going to try to stay away from guys who've missed significant time due to injury. With that said, we got to start out with Joel Embiid. And look, I know you didn't have to pay up as much this year as in years past for Embiid, but he was still going off the board in the late first round in most drafts. I saw him go quite a bit higher, in a few. You had to be aware of the risk reward at this point. And, some people like myself just completely stayed away. Others were willing to incur that risk. We're more than halfway through the season, and Joel Embiid has played in 13 games. He has not played more than 4 games in a row. I mean, it's been catastrophic no matter what, but especially if you're in a weekly lineups league. Like, at what point have you been comfortable locking him in for a full week at any point this season? I mean, it's just been a total disaster. Again, you knew what you were signing up for with Embiid, but the argument for drafting him is that even if he played, say, 50 games, he'd be so dominant in those 50 games that you could still justify the acquisition cost. But for the most part, Embiid he's been good when he's out there, but he hasn't been anything close to dominant. If we break it down on a per game basis, he's not even close to first round value this season. We're obviously dealing with a very small sample, again, 13 games, but his numbers are way down across the board, partially because even when he is out there, he's rarely seeing a full workload, and he's always coming back from something, some sort of injury, some sort of setback. He's not really at 100%. There's not really much else you could say here. If you drafted Embiid, you might be stuck with him. You could try to sell low, you could try to offload him, but obviously you'll have to be prepared to take 20 cents on the dollar. So hopefully the second half of the season goes better than the first, but it's really tough to be optimistic right now. All right, next on the list, another big man, Rudy Gobert. And I was a Rudy Gobert supporter during draft season, so this one has hit me hard personally. He's been so steady over the years. Thought he was going too late last season, especially. Saw the ADP rise back up this year. He was going around pick 45 to 50 in Yahoo leagues, and maybe that was a bit too aggressive. But either way, he ranks outside the top 100 right now in 8 category leagues on a per game basis. I will say part of the argument for Gobert is he does not miss time. So he still ranks inside the top 70 in total value, which accounts for games played. So he has not been nearly the same level of bust as someone like Embiid or the guys we'll talk about in the rest of the video. Regardless, though, I mean, Gobert is essentially posting career low numbers in points and rebounds. He's down to 1.5 blocks per game after sitting at 2.1 a year ago. His field goal percentage is also at its lowest since 2015-16, although he is bizarrely having the best free throw shooting season of his career. More than anything, though, like the splash games have completely evaporated. The games where Gobert would give you 4, 5, 6 blocks, that used to happen a lot more frequently. You look back at his final year in Utah, and I know we're turning the clock back a bit here, but Gobert had at least 4 blocks in over 20% of his games that season. And this season, that number's at about 9%. His block rate is down to 4.2%. His rebounding rate is down to 17%, by far a career low. Maybe that's Julius Randle related, but at the same time, Gobert obviously just played alongside Karl Towns the previous 2 seasons and, posted a much better rebounding rate. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on. What I do know is Gobert is still a solid fantasy starter. He's yet to miss a game this season, but he's not giving you close to top 50 level production. All right, now we're really getting into it here. Kyle Kuzma of the Washington Wizards. Yes, Kuzma has missed a decent chunk of the season so far, but his disappointment goes well beyond that. It does not fully paint the picture of just how bad this year has been for him. Even though the Wizards are the Wizards at the end of the day, Kuzma, he's been really living it up, putting up good numbers on a bad team these last couple of years, just kind of seemed very comfortable being that guy. He was coming off of 3 straight seasons in which he finished well inside the top 100 in per game value, averaged 22 a game last year, almost 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.2 threes, just straight up really solid numbers. This year, things have completely unraveled. Again, he's missed some time, but even on a per game basis, Kuzma ranks outside the top 250 right now in 8 cat leagues. I mean, he's been dropped in over 20% of Yahoo leagues, and really for good reason. I mean, he's down to 14 points per game on 42% shooting, 26% from three, 59% at the free throw line. Turnover rate is the highest it's been in his entire career. Honestly, he just looks like a shell of himself. He looks like he's lost his jumper. We started to see signs of this all the way back in the preseason. He's throwing up a ton of air balls. I would venture to guess that if you can find an air ball tracker, he's got to be number one in the NBA this season. If we just look at a little bit more of a recent sample. So since coming back from his last injury absence, he's now played in 14 games in a row. He's averaging just 12 points, 5.5 boards, and 3 assists on 42, 24, 51 shooting splits. Just completely abysmal. Maybe he pulls himself out of it, maybe, but you really can't afford to have Kyle Kuzma in your lineups right now. Maybe you can hold him on your roster and just hope that things get turned around, but you can't be starting him, especially in category leagues with those percentages just killing you. And not to keep piling on here, but if you look at the win shares numbers over at Basketball Reference, Kuzma has quite literally been the most damaging player in the NBA this season. Minus 1.2 win shares, dead last in win shares per 48 among players who played real minutes. If you set it at 500 minimum, he's by far the worst in the NBA. It's bleak, man. It's really bleak. All right, we'll finish out with Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. So like Joel Embiid, you knew there was some injury risk if you took Markkanen in, say, the third round of your draft. He has missed 10 games so far, but that's actually not that bad for a guy who's never played more than 68 games and has played 61 or fewer in 5 of his 7 NBA seasons. Really, the more frustrating thing with Markkanen is you never know when these missed games are going to pop up. He'll play for a couple weeks at a time, then he'll miss a game or two, then he's back, then he's out for 4 or 5 games. And frankly, I don't really see that changing. I mean, the Jazz are very clearly in tank mode. They'll probably start selling off some assets before the deadline. And there's a decent chance that Markkanen will once again be shut down toward the end of the season. You remember at the end of last year, he missed Utah's final 9 games. He missed 17 of the final 21. That could absolutely happen again. But beyond that, he's barely given you top 75 production when he is on the court. Scoring is down by more than 3 points per game. Rebounding is down by more than 2 boards per game. Doesn't really give you anything on defense. And while he is still hitting threes at a decent clip, 3.1 per game, that's fine. His percentage is down from the last couple of seasons, and he's taking so many threes. I mean, over 8 per game. He's shooting just 43% from the field overall, down from 48% last year, 50% in 2022-23. Now, he is still an elite free throw shooter, so that does help, but he's just not providing the stat profile of a guy who had a Yahoo ADP of 30 coming into the year. And again, given the Jazz situation, I think we're heading toward another draft pick focused season, so to speak, a draft pick focused second half. I think Markkanen is a major shutdown risk. And even if you have to take a loss here, I would be looking to get out of the Lauri Markkanen business right now if I'm holding him in a fantasy league. All right, that's going to do it for the 4 biggest busts of the fantasy basketball season so far. Did I miss anybody? Somebody killing you in your leagues? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, make sure you're subscribed to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball channel. And go check us out, rotowire.com/try, TRY, free access to everything on our site.